We're combining all the best old school wisdom with all the top new school methods to bring you the optimal way to coach and play the great game of baseball. This is the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass with Coach Bo.
Welcome, coaches. 2022, back at it. This episode, we will discuss what players truly want out of their coach, what they truly want from their coach. We're going to break down some strategies to set forth to help our players be more coachable. We talk about, hey, we want coachable players. You got to be coachable. We're going to talk about how and some strategies to get our players prepared to be more coachable. And lastly, we're going to talk about success rate, practice versus game success rate. Well, here we are. We're in our fourth calendar year with this podcast. It was launched back in 2019, at the end of 2019. We've been going pretty consistent. 2019, 2020, 2021, and now we're here in the year 2022. And a big reason, in fact, the driving force behind this podcast every week, putting in the time every Saturday morning and throughout the week to script it, but then to record it every Saturday morning, the driving force, the motivation behind it, make the baseball community a much better place, make your players much more successful. Of course, those are the two overarching motivators, but the specific feedback, the emails, the response that I get from so many of you listeners, that is motivational. That drives me to continue to provide and share out this message to help you, to support you, because I know you are all super bright people. You just don't have that experience in the baseball trenches that a lot of longtime baseball players and coaches have, such as myself. And so I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. I'm trying to give this in an efficient manner. We're trying to make this efficient and effective to fit it into your busy schedules, coming at you once a week. I don't put commercials on here. I've got 100. This is episode 111. We have no commercials. I edit it twice. I have Sam, my podcast editor. He's just awesome. He edits these out and he drops these down. So when I send it to him, the raw recording will be like 40 minutes. And when he sends it back, it'll be at like 35 minutes. And then I edit it again and drop off at least another minute to make sure you're getting the cream of what I'm trying to share with you. I'm trying to give you the best and trying to cut it out, the dead spaces, things like that, to move this and give it to you efficiently in your busy schedules, because I know that our schedules are very tight, but I also know that you want to be successful as a coach and go out there and be as prepared as possible. And that's why we're here. So thank you, all of you that are the great listeners of this podcast. I love to see the numbers continue to grow week in, month out. It's awesome. I love it. The thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads fires me up. So email me, reach out, tell me about you. Tell me where you're coming from as a coach. And also if you have any questions or things that you would like to have covered on this podcast. To kick off 2022, let's talk about one thing I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with, and that is coaches. The game is for the players. We are a support system. We are the supporting cast. We're the supporting actors and actresses. We're not the main show. The spotlight shouldn't be on us. It should be on the players. And what I mean by that is, coaches, don't be the show. Don't be the show. I swear I see these videos from time to time on YouTube or whatever, Twitter, and it's not good. These coaches are out of control, and it's really about the coach being the show in the forefront. The best coaches are in the shadows. They lay back, they coach without being the center of attention. So coaches, I really want to start off the year 2022. Keep it about the players. You are a huge part of their success. Without great coaching, without great leadership, I think most players, most teams would be lost. So the coaches, you are the support system. You are the foundation. But just like any good foundation, you can't see the foundation on a house for the most part. You see the house, but you don't see the foundation. You don't see all the work that's done with the leveling of the ground, with the foundation, the cement, the reinforcement that comes from underneath, from within. You do see the paint. You do see the exterior, the windows, the chandelier, the carpet. You see these things. You see the furniture, but you don't see, and you shouldn't see, a lot of the foundation. And that's really where coaches should be coming from. We don't want to be the center of attention. We don't want to be front and center, but you need to be a strong foundation. You need to be very involved without being the center of attention. You need to be very supportive. You need to be a huge part and definitely right there in the mix. You need to be close and in the mix, helping support and guide your team and your players, but also do it as low-key as possible. So I wanted to kick off 2022 with that message. Yes, you want to be massively supportive. You want to be involved. You want to be a big part, a foundational part for your players, your teams, your kids, but you also want to do it with as little of notoriety, with as little of limelight, with as little of the spotlight on you as possible. rules. So work that balance, just like any good pitcher, just like any good hitter. Balance, 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 just like life. Got to have that healthy balance. So work that in there. Part 2 today, I wanted to hit on players deep down all truly want the type of coach they truly need. Players deep down truly want the type of coach that they truly need. But on the surface, most players give off the impression that they want the type of coach that they don't need. Perception that coaches may get, that adults may get from players is that they want a certain type of coach. They want a coach that's a little easier on them, that lowers the expectations, that bends the rules, that doesn't push them, that wants them to always be successful, even at practice, that they want them to always have success and not fail. That's not the type of coach that the players truly deep down want. Players want the type of coach that they need. Although the misconception, the misperception is on the surface, what we see is misleading. Players will give off the impression that they want the type of coach they don't need. They don't need a friend. They don't need you to bend your rules and break your rules and not follow through. They don't need you to just be laissez-faire. They don't need you to be that type of coach. They need you to be the coach that they deep down truly want. Somebody that's supportive, somebody that praises them, but also somebody that draws a line in the sand, has high expectations, challenges them during practice. So players deep down truly want. I truly believe that they truly want the type of coach that they need, but on the surface, the perception that we're going to get as coaches, as adults is, hey, they don't really like this type of, they don't really want me. They'd rather easy street. No, players deep down don't want easy street. They want to overcome challenges. They want leadership and guidance, but they're kids. Okay? They're going to look for the path of least resistance like everybody. Humans are designed for the path of least resistance until somebody a little bit stronger, a little more wisdom comes along, a little older, somebody who can guide them and has the discipline to say, hey, easy street's not the street we want to be on. That's not the path we want to take in life, because easy street leads to nowheresville. We don't want to be there. We want to take down, we want to go over some challenges, we want to have some discipline, we want to have high expectations for ourselves. So that is a key message I think we need to know and understand. Don't fall for the perception, don't fall for that trap that players will unintentionally set. They will make you believe that they want you to be their friend, that they want it easy. No, they may think they do, but they don't really deep down, in my opinion, want that. They want a coach that praises them. They want a coach that shows them love, but they want the coach that does not lead them down easy street. They don't like that. They don't want that deep down. And at the end of the day, even if they do want that, that's not what they need. What they need is a coach that'll take them on the tougher track, the tougher path, and lead them and not shy away from some failure, some struggle, some challenges, and also will lay down the law when it needs to be laid down and will be firm with those expectations and those few rules that you should all have as coaches. We can all sit here and talk about where the hand should be on the bat and how to grip a certain pitch and what the first step should look like when we're stealing second base. We can all look at and talk about and discuss how the relay should be set up and how we should do our double cuts. Those are important, but nothing is more important than the overall big picture, overarching paradigm and approach that we have to coaching. And that is what we just talked about on those first 2 points. And now we're going to discuss another one. If you want all these little strategies on, how to hold the glove and, where the arm angle should be exactly. Yeah, those are important. But what's most important are these overarching foundational parts of coaching. These are going to win way more games at the end of the day or at the end of the week when it's game time. Part 3 today. It may be, I do actually think it is a good idea for coaches, for us coaches, to facilitate a preseason discussion in which clear expectations are defined and set forth, describing and showing or explaining clearly and concisely exactly how being a coachable player should look, what a coachable player should do, and how they should handle certain situations, especially those situations that occur often where a coachable player will definitely respond different than the uncoachable player. So having coachable players is huge, hugely impactful on the success of any team, the camaraderie, the cohesiveness, and the success on the scoreboard. I think we need to back up and say, coaches, we probably need to explain, not to all the players, but we should do it as a team, but not all players need to hear it. Not all players need it defined and described and examples shared out. But I believe that it is a very worthwhile thing to do at the beginning of the season. And the spring baseball season is just around the corner. One of the first things we should do, along with laying out our rules and expectations clearly and concisely, I truly and firmly believe that we also need to describe and explain exactly what a coachable player looks like, what they do, and what the expectations are. So show it, put it out there, set forth and define exactly how being coachable should look. I think it's important that we don't think all players come from our background and from our experiences. Some have been let down. A lot have not been shown the path to being more coachable. They have not been shown examples of being a person that can take on critique, a person that can take on criticism a little bit, or constructive criticism. So it's very important as a coach that we set forth the expectations and define exactly how being coachable should look. So we want our players to know what a coachable player does, how they act, what they do in certain situations. Within it's parameters. It's not an exact dictum. It's not do this, this, and this exactly, but it's a parameter. It's defining how, and they're all going to have their own little unique reactions to certain situations, but you want to set forth some parameters to what being coachable should look like. Don't tell your players, hey, you got to be coachable. You got to be coachable. Hey, you just got to be more coachable. What does that look like? Let's not assume they know what being coachable looks like. A good place to start with this, a good tip, a good strategy to set forth, or a good expectation to set forth is players. This is you talking, or this is me talking to the team. Players, it's important that we are coachable, not just in baseball, but in life. Being coachable will help us grow and become much better people much faster. If we're coachable, if we absorb and take in the advice, the suggestions, the tips, and sometimes perceived as criticism that comes our way. Notice how I start with the why. Sell it to them, why they need to be coachable. And then an example of them being coachable would be, hey players, when we suggest something, when we give you a tip, or when we give you a corrective piece of feedback, don't just quickly respond with something. Don't quickly say something back. Think about it, absorb it. If you have something to say, or if you still have questions, take a deep breath, absorb it, maybe come back to it a little later, come back and address it with us later. If you don't feel the need to reply to feedback with a comment, don't feel the need to reply at all. Just sit there, shake your head and go, okay, coach, thank you. And then take it in. Doesn't mean, and you can tell this to your players, doesn't mean you need to then just go right ahead and do it. You may have questions as to, is this the best way, or why should I do it that way? You may have questions, but those should come a little later, or at least at a minimum after a deep breath, or after thinking it through a little bit rather than a quick comeback. So that would be a specific example of teaching a player to be more coachable. Another specific suggestion I would make to players is trying something new is the only path or the only way to growth. If you want to get better, you have to do it different. Doing it better inherently involves doing it different. Doing it different and doing it better have to go together. If you want to get better, you have to do it a little different, or at least adjust it or improve it or tinker with it a little bit. So you tell your players to be coachable, you have to be willing to try something a little different or something completely different, but that's where growth comes at. That's where you get better in life and make huge jumps in your success. So when we share feedback from the coaches to the players, when we're telling you players to try something, to do this, try it, test it out. Don't be afraid of different. Don't be afraid of failing and growing. Now, those are two specific examples of things you can say to players. The second one involves selling it and explaining it, giving an example and selling it together. You definitely want to sell why they should be coachable, why it's important to their growth, and then also provide them specific examples of how it should look. Provide specific examples and then model it. Model it too. If you're a coach getting feedback from somebody in front of the players, or just in general, you model it. You don't just sit there and say, oh yeah, but we're doing it this way because of that. Or, hey coach, maybe it's just, yeah, but this is what we don't do it that way because of it. Take a deep breath, absorb it. Don't feel the need to make that quick comeback, that quick excuse and things like that. So you set the example, but also you're laying it out there for the players. Sell them on the why behind coachability and why it's going to be massively beneficial for them in life and their growth and becoming a much better person, a much more successful person, much faster. And then lay out 3 or 4 or 5 examples of how that will look when they're out there on the practice field, when they're in the dugout, when it's game time and they're taking in this feedback. Also provide them an out, provide them an alternative response to just going ahead full bore with your feedback. If they don't agree with it or they're not sure, this is important. This is important that we teach young people to ask questions, to ask why it is that they should do this, but they need to do it in a healthy and appropriate manner. I think it's very important that we don't raise youth to just be sheep, but they shouldn't be wolves. They should be sheepdogs. They should be in the middle. They should definitely definitely listen to authority. They should respect it, but they should also ask when it doesn't make sense, when it doesn't add up maybe to them at that time. Doesn't mean they have all the answers, doesn't mean they're right, but if it doesn't add up or doesn't make sense, or they're not sure why it is that they're being told to do X, Y, or Z, they should feel confident in asking for an explanation, the why behind it. But it needs to be done in a healthy way. So you can tell your players, if you're not sure why, or you don't agree with what I'm sharing, or you don't agree with this, or this conflicts with what your parents tell you, or your hitting coach tells you, or your pitching coach on the side tells you, this is definitely something that we want you to set forth and let us know about, but let's do it in a healthy way. Maybe you bring it up after practice, maybe you bring it up on the side, or maybe you bring it up low key. It's not a quick, loud rebuttal, but we can discuss it in a healthy way. And at a minimum, try out this new technique, this new feedback, this new strategy, this new tip, this new coaching pointer that we're sharing with you. And then maybe at the end of practice, you come up and say, hey, my hitting coach has me doing this. My pitching coach has me doing this. I've coached players that flat out will ignore what I share with them because their pitching guy, the coach they work with on the sides on the weekends, or their hitting coach that they go see for their lessons teaches them something different and tells them just ignore their high school coach. In fact, I know there's a lot of hitting coaches and pitching coaches out there that do this. They tell their players to just ignore what their coaches are telling them, their team coaches, their high school coach or their youth coach, and say, hey, just do it this way. Ignore what they're saying. This is bad for everybody because this is putting all your eggs in one basket. Doesn't mean that the hitting coach, that pitching guy is not 100% right. And a lot of times they are, but you're also putting all your eggs in one basket. That's not a healthy approach. Could you imagine a business not doing A/B testing nowadays? If you talk to any company that runs any kind of organization, especially online, they A/B test everything. Depending on which one you land on, it may look different. The buttons may be in different places. The words may be different, but they got to test it out to see which one gets the most or has the most success. So you want to sell them. You want to explain these. You want to share this with your players on what being coachable looks like and what are some things they can do to be a more coachable player. And also, if they don't agree with the coaching they're getting, what's a healthy way to respond? This doesn't need to be a long, drawn-out lecture. This could be done for the first 1, 2, or 3 practices. It could be done within 5 minutes. If it's bulleted out, I'm a big fan of bulleting out what you're going to share. Don't need a script at all, but you should have the bullet points, and you should stick to those bullet points and not get off on tangents. Keep it clear, keep it concise, but let's set forth those expectations to our players, how coaching should be received, how being coachable should look. And you can just take this idea, this paradigm, and run with it. You probably have some examples in your head you're thinking of. Share those with your players. Give them some specific concrete examples of what a coachable player looks like. So when you get moving and cruising along in the season, there's clarity from your players as to how they should respond and act with some parameters, not specific, exact, strict guidelines, but rather parameters that you've outlined, that you've set forth. Let's wrap it up with this. Coaches, if our players have a higher success rate in practice, if your players have a higher success rate in practice than they do in the games, your practices need to be more challenging. Practices, in my opinion, across the board, youth baseball, high school baseball, are not as difficult and not as challenging. And the reason I think this is true, I think it's because a lot of coaches believe that players gain a lot of confidence from having success in practice. I couldn't disagree further with this. I do think the best way to get confidence for your players is to make practice very challenging. So when they go into the game and they see the other pitcher, when they go into the game and they see the speed of the game, when they get into the game and they see the base runner stealing bases on them, that is not nearly as challenging as most of the practice that you've designed. The other thing is, speaking of practice design, I don't think practices are designed to have extra challenge. This takes some strategy. This takes some thinking and some wherewithal. You have to plan this out. You have to, as a coach, be mindful that you are not just making your entire practice super crazy tough, but also you don't want to make it easy. I think more coaches err on the side of making their practices too easy for the most part. And then when the games come around, they wonder why their team is not prepared. A famous quote from a Navy SEAL that I read years ago: you don't rise to the level of the competition. You don't rise to the level of the game. You don't rise to the level of the event that's taking place. You sink. Players sink. Teams sink to the level of their training. Let that set in a little. Teams, players sink to the level of their training. Well, let's make sure our training's high enough. When they sink, it's still better than the competition. Practices need to have parts. They need to have segments. They need to have parts of the drill, a ratio of each drill, if possible, that is more difficult than the typical game, or more specifically, more difficult than when they play the next best team in the league or the highest level of competition in the league or playoff type of competition. If our players have a higher success rate in practice than they do in the games, our practices need to be more challenging. challenging. Now, this doesn't mean practices aren't supposed to be fun. They should be fun. They should be enjoyable, but they should be challenging. These two things can definitely coexist. They do not have to be mutually exclusive. Practices can have a component or an underlying factor of fun, a higher level of fun than the typical practice, but also be challenging. Just be upfront with your players when you do this. Be upfront with your players. Sell them on the why. Why are your practices? Why are the team's practices more challenging than the practices they're used to in the past? Maybe with other teams. Why are they more difficult than what they're used to? Number one, you got to sell it to them that this is going to benefit them. This is going to make the game easier. You sell it to them. You say, hey, do you want to be good in practice or good in the game? Do you want to be great in practice or great in the games? You can't be both. You have to be okay. You have to have a lot of failure, a lot of learning in practice. You got to have some growth, some big strides. You got to be challenged in practice, which inherently is going to lead to more failure, more swings and misses, more ground balls getting by, a few more errors being made. So thus, when the game comes around, the game is going to seem a lot slower. The challenge is going to seem lesser, and thus they're going to have more success. Players should go into games going, geez, this is easier in practice. And if you look at all the great coaches over the history of sports, if you look at all the great coaches, many players have come out and said that have played for these great coaches that have had consistent long-term success. And they'll say, the game is easier than our practice. The games are easier than our practices. When we get to the game, it's a lot of fun because the practice was the hard part. Practice was the hard thing. So keep this in mind. If you go out there and make your practices crazy hard, kids are not going to have any fun. So you got to have a balance. The 20-40-40 ratio is something that I'm a big believer in. 20% of your drill, 20% of your practice. It's a little harder with each drill. It takes some coaching. It takes some mindfulness to do this, to incorporate this ratio. But approximately 20% of your drill practice should be a little easier than the game. The speed should be a little slower, working a little more on technique and footwork and hand placement, things like that. Approximately, this is an approximation, kind of a parameters. Approximately 40% of your practice should be game speed, and approximately 40% of your practice should be faster or more difficult or more challenging than the typical game situation for whatever that is. So like in batting practice, say you're throwing them 10 pitches. Let's just pick some easy round numbers. You're throwing them 10 pitches in their batting practice round. 2 of those pitches should just be, hey, nice and easy, not lollipops. It should be nice and easy, okay? And then you throw them 4 pitches that are, somewhat challenging, kind of your average challenge difficulty, whether it's location, velocity, spin, and then 40%, or at least maybe you break it up in different rounds. The first round is a little easier, get their swing in, get their timing down a little bit. Then you pick it up more of like an actual game speed. And then the last 4 pitches, for example, in this example, the last 4 of the 10, the last 40% would be challenging. Maybe you uptick it. Maybe you hit your spot a little harder. Maybe you challenge them in a spot, they have a hole in their swing. You really hammer that. Or maybe you throw your better breaking ball or your better changeup. That's what I'm talking about. Now, when you get to the upper levels like college and pro, this is harder to do because these players are so good. But at youth ball, as dads, usually you have a better fastball than the best guy in the league, the best kid in the league. Usually you have a better breaking ball, or at least you can get the pitching machine to represent or replicate something a little more challenging than the best kid in the league. It's a little harder when you get to college and pro ball because now going above and beyond the typical competition at that level, it's a little harder to replicate from the coaches, 1, and 2, just batting machine or pitching or any kind of machine that can do that just makes it a lot harder. But at youth baseball level, this is something that can be done by almost all dads and moms out there on the field. Again, the 20-40-40 ratio is not an exact number. It's just an idea. The concept is 20% of your practice or a drill should be a little easier, a little slower than the game than 20%. Like ground balls is a perfect example. Say you're hitting them approximately 50 ground balls. Well, maybe the first 10 to each guy, or, not super sharp. You're not crushing them. You're not hitting rockets. You're hitting them. They're getting their footwork. They're getting their time, their glove. They're kind of syncing everything up. And then the next 20, numbers 10 through 30, are about game speed, game difficulty level. And then the last 20, the last 40%, so the last 20 reps, the last 20 ground balls could be much harder or more difficult. You might involve using an Incredible for this or a tennis ball if you have to. Maybe you get closer. Maybe you work their backhand. If it's not good, maybe you're making them their range. Maybe you're making them dive. Maybe you're making it a chopper that they got to charge and flip, which is difficult. Maybe the runner gets a head start, so you're making it harder. You're giving the runner like a 5-foot head start or a 3-step head start, so you're making them go faster. Whatever it is, there's a lot of ways you can make practice more difficult by changing the dynamics of a drill. An easy way is to give the opponent an inherent advantage, like simply just starting the runner closer to the next base. So you have your kids running to first base, give them a 5-yard head start. This essentially would mimic your team, your infielders having to make a play against the runner that's probably faster or at least going to get to first base faster than maybe the fastest kid in the league. Challenge them. All right, coaches, don't be the center of attention. Stay out of the spotlight. Be the foundation foundation to the house. You can't really see it very well, but it's there, and without it, the house would crumble, but you're not the spotlight. Let the players be the lights and the chandelier and the paint and all the fancy furniture. You be the foundation, kind of out of sight, out of mind from those that were maybe looking at it from outside the field. Second, players deep down all truly want the type of coach that they truly need, but on the surface, the perception is most players give off the perception that they want the type of coach they don't need. All right, so be the coach they need, not the coach that they want, but they really deep down want that coach they need. Set forth the expectations on what being coachable should look like. Give examples early, keep it concise, keep it clear. Explain to the players how being coachable should look out there on the field, in the dugout, when they're getting coached up. Don't assume that all players know how to be coachable. Assume that most players don't really understand or understand clearly how to be a coachable player. So let them know. Sell them on the importance of being coachable, sell them on the why, and then give them some examples of how it should look as you move forward in the season. And coaches, if our players have a higher success rate in practice than they do in the games, on average, our practices, they need to be more challenging. And that's going to wrap up our episode. Take care of yourself, take care of your health so you can take care of your families, help out your friends. Take this information, go out to the baseball field, make it a better place, have more success. Speaking of success, go to the 80/20 Baseball website or email me, Coach Bo at 8020baseball.com for more information on getting your pitchers more successful and our upcoming pitchers clinic, our upcoming live pitching webinar that we're going to be doing. Email me if you want more information on that. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.